Hello everybody, and welcome to Robert Review Stuff, where the time has come for me to tell everybody who's interested about all the movies that I saw in 2016. I made this a pretty damn daunting task for myself by watching a total of 59 of the movies that Wikipedia said came out last year, which by my count is a hell of a lot of movies. But I'm not going to make you nice people sit through 8 hours of me talking about my thoughts on all of those movies. Anyone interested in that can read all about them starting next week on my WordPress page. See the link in the description below. For those with better things to do, I'll compress it down into my favorite and least favorite 5 of the year, with a couple honorable mentions. But before I get to that, I've made one big change this year. I've noticed in the past that my nerdiness has often made my favorites a little bit comic book heavy. Right. So this year I'm limiting myself to only one comic book movie per section, to give the other guys a chance. And you guys can just be aware that in my heart they're all on the list, but my brain overrode it. So let's get to the list, starting with the worst films of 2016. Dishonorable mentions. The Forest, because I'm pretty sure horror movies are supposed to be scary, and this one wasn't. Inferno, because apparently Tom Hanks can't fix every movie. Just most movies, but not this one. And Suicide Squad, mostly because of Jared Leto, but I also didn't think the rest of the movie was very good. Number 5, the Divergent series, Allegiant. I don't know why I watched Allegiant. I also don't know why I watched Divergent. And more than that, I don't know why I watched this one when I apparently forgot to watch Insurgent, which I guess is the second one. So maybe fans of the series would argue that I didn't like this one because I wasn't able to follow the deep and cohesive storyline. Also a possibility, because it was boring and dumb. When I watched the first one, I only barely understood what they were trying to go for, and this one just added more things for me to be confused by. Perhaps if I had seen the second one, it would have been the appropriate level of confusion to shut my brain down completely so that I could enjoy this movie. But that didn't happen. But instead of that, I found myself completely capable of realizing that this movie had some fairly big ideas and stopped right about there. But they did throw in some really pretty computer pictures to make it all look nice. And then they threw a few great actors in there and surrounded them by pretty actors that could pass as moderately acceptable actors, and then called that a trilogy. Skip it. Number 4, The Darkness. I didn't even know this movie existed until I saw it on Wikipedia, and then out of nowhere it gets to be on my list for the whole year. Congratulations. Anyway, I know we've all sat around and thought to ourselves about how much we'd like to see a boring and cliched version of Poltergeist, right? And so we watched the remake of Poltergeist, but feeling that that wasn't quite bland and obvious enough, we started demanding to see a movie like The Darkness. It's essentially Poltergeist with the burial ground replaced by 5 rocks and an autistic child found in the desert. And that's real. And for most of the movie, the family's biggest concern is with the dry cleaning bill from trying to get all the black handprints off of everything. And the funny weird lady from Poltergeist is now replaced with a Mexican lady and her granddaughter, who are for some reason the experts that you call in when you're having trouble with Anasazi demons. I guess as long as their skin is brown, they can probably do it. They all look the same to us anyway. So I guess what I'm saying is, instead of bothering with this movie, just go watch Poltergeist. Either one's better. Number 3, The Boy. Wow, 2 in a row with the mediocre horror movies. And along with The Forest, another mediocre horror film starring a good hot actress from very good popular TV shows I love. The big thing that sets this movie apart is that it's really, really weird. You start off thinking that the movie's all about some super crazy old people that want to pay a hot lady to watch a doll that they treat like their actual son. Okay, fair enough. Then the movie starts seeming like it's a little more subtle and psychological version of Chucky from Child's Play. And then it's even weirder than that. Somehow, Ghost would have been more feasible and probably scarier than what they ended up going with. On a positive note, Lauren Cohan was good, and she was hot. I did not care for Brahm, though. His performance was a little stiff and wooden. Get it? Number 2, Zoolander 2. I feel like Zoolander 2 wasn't able to hurt my feelings too badly because I didn't hold the original Zoolander in high enough esteem to go into this movie expecting much. I also can't say that it hurt me too badly because I barely remember seeing it. I know I did see it. I'm pretty sure I bought it on Blu-ray. Maybe that's because the closest to funny this movie gets is by rehashing vaguely funny things from the first movie, but that's not going to be good enough. And the movie has a ton of cameos, which is great, if that's more important than humor out of a comedy to you guys. The only kind of funny moments in this movie were from Kyle Mooney's hipster character Don Atari, and from the fact that they killed Justin Bieber in the very beginning. But if I can't say I like a movie that kills Justin Bieber in the first 5 minutes, then that movie is probably not very good. Number 1, the worst film of 2016. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I would never have been classified as a fan of the DC universe, and with movies like they put out when Christopher Nolan isn't behind the camera, they are doing nothing to help that. Now, I didn't despise Batman v Superman as much as other nerds I've heard talk about it, because I'm not as close to the source material as they are. but the movie still sucks. You see, I've actually read Dark Knight Returns. Zack Snyder should too, it's pretty good. Instead, I think he might have read the Wikipedia article about it, or the Cliff Notes if they do that for comic books. Pretty much what he understood is that Batman fights Superman at some point. He didn't really get why, but thought that it would be pretty cool. He also didn't really get the character of Batman, and that whole one rule thing that he talked about in The Dark Knight. You know, that rule about how Batman doesn't kill. Like, even if blowing up that car with the enemies in it would look really cool and get them out of his hair for a little while. Like, not even if there was a 1% chance that someone would be a bad guy. Because, you know, everyone has about a 1% chance of being a bad guy, and he specifically not killed the Joker, who has about a 3004% chance of being a bad guy. Hell, Batman himself has a much larger than 1% chance of being a bad guy. Also, I was not on board with Jesse Eisenberg's over-the-top Luthor weirdness. He was super annoying through the entire movie, but then a little bit good and intimidating at the very end. On a positive note, I liked Ben Affleck a lot, and I look forward to what he'll do with the character in the future. And he had some great action scenes that felt like they were straight out of the Arkham games. Also, Gal Gadot was great, and every Wonder Woman scene was awesome, and would have been much more awesome if every one of those scenes wasn't in the trailer. So this isn't a painfully bad movie to watch, but where it hurts itself is by being about well-established characters that it doesn't seem to understand. And by not being very good. It hurts itself pretty bad with that. Enough with all the negativity, am I right? Who am I kidding? That's my favorite part. Speaking of my favorites, the best films of 2016. Honorable mentions. The Jungle Book and Moana. Because they are super good and super Disney, and that is a good thing most of the time. Sully, because even though it's not a believable concept for a movie at all, it's pretty good and well handled. And Doctor Strange, and Captain America Civil War, because some a-hole had to go and say only one comic book movie per section, but he really enjoyed these as well. Number 5, The Shallows. I know, I was super surprised I liked this movie too. But this movie has it all. Thrills, chills, suspense, and Blake Lively in a bikini. This is what I expected from The Shallows, and this is what I got. I would say the movie takes a little too long to get to the heavy stuff, but since that time is spent watching Blake Lively be super hot, it felt like a productive use of my time. But then, when it gets going, it's pretty damn edge of your seat all the way through to the end of the movie. And that shark is a dick. Look, I understand, you gotta eat, but if you're just looking for food, there's a huge dead whale like 20 feet away that they use to explain why you showed up in the first place. And there's a lot more meat on that thing than there is on Blake. So really, you're just doing this to be an asshole. And he was. Fuck that shark. Also, not even counting her ridiculous hotness, I thought Blake Lively was fantastic in this movie. And I'd be willing to kick that up to amazing since the only other thing I've seen her in was the Green Lantern, and I didn't know she had this kind of performance in her. I thought everyone did a really good job with this movie, and I think it's worth watching. Just like Blake Lively is. I mean, look at that. Number 4, Ouija, Origin of Evil. Yay, I got to see a decent horror movie this year. Now, because of Netflix, I've seen so many Ouija movies that I can't even tell if they're supposed to be connected or not. And if any of them are connected, then I'm not sure why I watched this one because all the rest that I've seen are awful. Apparently, this movie is a prequel to the movie that's just called Ouija, which was garbage. But thankfully, Origin of Evil was inexplicably pretty damn good. It's pretty well paced and nerve-wracking, with a solid story and some good scares, and some pretty good acting to bring it all together. One of my favorite things that they did in this movie is that they had scary things standing in the background that they just didn't make a big deal about. There would just be a silhouette standing back there that you could kind of make out because it had glowing orange eyes, but they wouldn't zoom in on it or make a music sting to make sure everyone saw it. You don't need to see these things for the movie to work, but once I saw one, I was nervously checking the background of every scene. Also, every time they look through the lens of that little planchette thing, it makes me want to hide until it's all over. This movie brings a fair amount from The Exorcist and Poltergeist to help it be effective, and that's just what it is. Great horror movie, worth watching. Number 3, Kubo and the Two Strings. This movie blew my damned mind. I had only a mild desire to see it based on its interesting style and Asian feel, but never got around to it until my friend Maggie raved about it. I rented it, watched it, and then went to purchase it in full immediately afterwards. It succeeds on every level. The story is a new one to me, funny in parts, touching in others, and interesting to all ages throughout. And the animation is beautiful and engaging. The cast also knocks it out of the park. I really am at a loss for things to say about this movie beyond saying that I loved it and recommend that you watch it post-haste. So I'll just do that. Number 2, Zootopia. At first glance, Zootopia seems like it's just another cute Disney movie. And it is, but there's also a lot more to it than that. On the surface, it's cute, beautiful, funny, and charming. All the things that kids will enjoy out of a movie. And things get hit on the head a few times, and that is a child's pinnacle of comedy. And mine too. But deeper down, this movie bases itself on a message of trust and friendship overcoming prejudice and fear. That shit's pretty deep for a Disney movie, and sadly topical. It seems like it's all about this cute little prey bunny who has to overcome everyone else's prejudice against her to make her dream a reality and become a police officer. But even she has to come to the realization that she and other prey also jump to conclusions about the predators being prone to violence, and about the Mexicans all being rapists. And the best thing about this message is that it's there, and it's obvious, but it also doesn't beat you over the head with it to the point of annoyance. The voice cast is also fantastic, including the two main characters that carry the movie, Goodwin and Bateman, and also Shakira, who performed the great song for the movie and made me feel weird things while looking at a gazelle. I cannot find a significant fault in this movie, and I have no interest in trying to. Number 1, the best film of 2016, Deadpool. Speaking of having trouble finding fault in a movie, coming from a longtime fan of the character, I would have a hard time finding fault in the movie Deadpool. So I won't. I loved this movie. The action was great, and the comedy delivered practically non-stop all the way to the end of the movie, and starting from and including the opening credits. I mean, how many times would you tell someone they better not miss the opening credits in a movie? Speaking of the credits, the whole cast was really fantastic. Marina Baccarin and Gina Carano were really hot, and Ryan Reynolds was also really hot. Everyone delivered exactly what they needed to. And my favorite thing about this movie, not only did they not completely ruin the character of Deadpool, they made fun of the previous time when they did completely ruin the character of Deadpool. Basically, if you don't like this movie, you just don't like Deadpool. Because this movie is, to me, the perfect capturing of the character. To me, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this movie. And the only thing that makes me nervous about a sequel is that they might not be able to recapture what this movie had. But I'll certainly be in the theaters as soon as possible to find out. But as long as they don't remove the mouth from a character whose nickname is the Merc with a Mouth, then it couldn't possibly be that bad, could it? So that's all I have to say for the best and worst movies of 2016. Do you disagree with any of my choices? Think I left something out? Well, let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you'd like to read about the other 49 movies I watched last year, follow the link in the description to my WordPress site starting next week. And I'll see you next time. I have been Robert, and the films of 2016 have just been reviewed. Jupiter Ascending. The only thing I really remember about this movie is that I watched it. But it still winds up here because I didn't see much that was worse. What I've been able to piece together from deep meditation and reading on Wikipedia is that Mila Kunis is the lost queen of some planet, and Channing Tatum is her puppy. And if that's not true, then I had a really strange and boring dream, and I should stop eating pizza before bed.